What is up, my wonderful angels? It is your absolute favorite musical angel and singing sensation, Justin Melo's Music and Vlogs, back for another incredible episode there. And I am so excited to be back to chatting with you guys, because this is going to be the best one that you definitely want to stick around for, as we are getting ready for a brand new season of The Price is Right, celebrating season 55, and also at that same time slot, we got another incredible show that's also made its appearance in Canada, that already went around for one season, and it's around for the second season, which I will tell you more details about. It is, of course, called The Price is Right Tonight. And the host of the show is Howie Mandel. And if you don't know him, he is an amazing comedian. And of course, you also know him from the judges panel over at both America's Got Talent as well as Canada's Got Talent. And I'm so happy that he got to host the show, and it's really amazing. And the model presenter that does it all is Ashley Collingbull. And make sure you stick around for all those details and so much more to get through. First of all, if you are new to here, make sure you go hit the red subscribe button below and turn on all notifications so you don't miss out on any new videos that I publish throughout. And definitely keep your eyes open for any new ones when they do come available. And also, if you haven't watched the one video that I did talk about the episode of The Price is Right and all my favorite pricing games that I spoke about, I'll leave the annotation info card to that video right at the top right, so you can go check that out. But I am so stoked to tell you about The Price is Right Tonight, which is also known as The Price is Right Canadian Edition. So I will be talking about all those, mostly the changes to some of those pricing games that they did, including where they do it on, and so much more. And we'll see how it all goes on. And most of those similarities are still intact as of what you see in the American version of the show. So, without further ado, let's get down to the details, and here we go. And on to the first part of it. Now, of course, as usual, they usually start with bringing down the first four contestants down to the contestants row, or as many of them call it, the bidders row. And then they bring out the host out. Now, what they start off first is they bring the host out, and then he tells the announcer, which is Ben Schulman, which you may have known him when he calls those baseball games, the Blue Jays, on the radio. He calls the contestants to come on down. And then once that's done, then they go present the first prize up for bids in something called the one bid. And of course, after you hear the description of the prize, then the contestants place their bids, and they have to come closest to the actual retail price without going over. And whoever is the closest gets to go up on stage and play a pricing game for more prizes. Now, there is one significant change that you might have noticed there compared to the American version. Now, usually when the contestant gets the bid exactly right on the nose, they would get a cash bonus of $500. In the Canadian version of the show of The Price is Right Tonight, however, there's no cash bonus, but that's the way it goes sometimes. So, that's how it works. And they do it 4 times instead of 6, as in the American version of the show. So that's the one change. And it is still really good to know your pricing skills on every single prize, if you know how this goes. Now it is on to the pricing games, and as usual, as you would all know, it equals the amount of the times that the contestant has to win on their one bid to go play for another prize. So instead of 6 that you see on the American show, there's 4. And the first one I'm going to go talk about is, of course, Plinko, which I'm sure everyone's familiar with, because it is always exciting and it's usually everyone's favorite game to play for cash. All with a lucky drop of those Plinko chips. Now, the top prize, of course, is exactly the same as in the American show. Of course, each chip can be worth up to $10,000, and if you get 5 of them nailed in that exact spot, you could win up to $50,000, which is really exciting. Now, of course, there's also other amounts that you also see in the American show. There's $1,000, there's $500, $100, and of course, the zeros you want to avoid landing on, because I'm sure you know how this goes. Now, of course, as usual, the contestant gets a chance to win up to 4 more additional chips if they know something about those 4 prizes there. And after the description of each prize, then they'll be presented with those 2 numbers right there. Of course, only one of those 2 numbers on either side is correct. You choose the right one, and if they're correct, they get another chip, and they just keep going until they go through. And then the contestant collects those chips and brings it up to the top of the Plinko board, and then all they gotta do is lay 1 chip flat against the board and drop it. And it's a really good thing about this protective gate right there, because it prevents the Plinko chip from flying off the board, which I'm sure you probably know about way back then in the Barker era. Luckily they put that in place so it prevents the chip from flying off the board. And all there is to it is just drop those Plinko chips and hope that it lands on those money slots. And at the end of the time, that's how much cash they get at the end of the game. So, Plinko, it still remains one of my favorites, and I hope you will enjoy it as well as much as I did. So hopefully you enjoy the Plinko, and there's so much more to get through as we go on to the next pricing game that they also showed on The Price is Right tonight. Alright, on to the next pricing game. As you can see that I'm outside. Well, not really, but you know how this goes. But anyways, on to the next pricing game, which is one of those favorite time games right there where you win a couple of prizes. And I'm talking about one called the Clock Game. Now, for those that are not familiar with the Clock Game, it's really that simple. Basically, you're presented 2 prizes there, and what the contestant must do is to win both of those prizes within the time limit of 30 seconds. And how that works is the contestant has to bid, and they have to do it as fast as they can, and they have to listen closely to hear the host say higher or lower than what they just bid, and they want to keep this going until they get the exact price right on the nose. Now, there is one difference that is something quite significant in the Canadian version of the show as compared to the US version of the show. Now, I'm sure you all know in the American version there, before they get the clock started, they go show the actual retail price of the prize that the contestant has to get the exact price for to the audience as well to the viewers at home. In the Canadian version of the show, they don't show the actual retail price of the prize to the viewers at home and to the audience, which is a little bit skeptical, but at least it's to make sure that they do hope to get the price right. So you just want to make sure to get the price right there. So make sure you do it as fast as you can so that you'll have enough time to get the price of the other prize. And if you get both of those prizes right there before the 30 seconds runs out, you win the game and those prizes. It is really that simple. And it's all about knowing when to play the game and knowing how to adjust your bid so that way you'll efficiently win it all. And now it's on to the next pricing game. And oh yes, another one of my favorite time games of all time. And it's one that requires physical running, so you want to be in better shape there if you hope to win all 4 of the prizes within the time limit, which I'm going to talk about in this part. And the pricing game I'm talking about is, of course, the race game. Now, I'm sure you all know how the race game goes. Of course, there's 4 price tags right there, and all 4 of those price tags correspond to the correct prize out of those 4. And of course, after you see those 4 and go through the description of it, then all you gotta do is take those price tags and you want to run them over and put them in the correct tags right there of where you think they belong. And then you gotta run back down and you want to pull down the lever and the indicator will indicate how many of those you have correct. Now, if you see 4, then the game ends and you win all 4 of the prizes. If there's anything less than 4, so if it's a 0, 1, or 2, then you gotta run back and make changes when there's still time left on the clock. And you want to do it as many times as you can, and you want to rush it there because you only get 45 seconds to get all those prizes back into those correct prizes. So that way, this goes. And at the end of the 45 seconds, whichever ones you get correct, that's what you win. And it's a whole lot of fun. And you want to make sure that you get those prices in the correct spot. So, of course, a few examples there. If you got none of it right, then you have to switch all 4. If it's 1 right, you got to change 3 of them. If it's 2 right, you change 2 of them. It's really that simple. And you'll get to know why when I go talk about the next time game in this episode. So make sure you stick around so you know what to do. And on to the next pricing game. And ta-da! We are in the grocery store game, as I'm sure you probably all know about. As you all know how this is going to go, like a grocery store. And I'm talking about the next pricing game, which is also knowing about running against the clock while putting the correct products in the correct spot. And the one that I'm talking about is called Time is Money. Now, for those that aren't familiar with Time is Money, it is real simple because there's 5 products, and what the contestant needs to do is get the correct products in the correct spots so that they fit with the correct ones. And if they get it all correct on the first attempt, they'll have 10 seconds to do it on the first try, and if they succeed, they'll win the top prize of $20,000 in cash. And if they don't get it correct on the first try, then they'll have a second attempt to make those changes and all that while the clock becomes the money counting down. I'll talk about that after. But generally, there's 3 price ranges that they need to follow. Now, whichever ones are worth 0 to $3.99 will go in the first pedestal. Those that are 4 to $7.99 will go in the second, and $8 and more will get them onto the last pedestal at the end. And if they get them all correct in those 10 seconds in the first try, that's when they get 20 grand. Now, in the second attempt, if they don't get it right on the first attempt, the $20,000 on the board will act as the clock, and the contestant will lose $500 every second that counts down. And generally how this goes is they go make those changes, and when they believe they got the right ones in, then they gotta run back and push that red button, and they have to listen closely for one of those 2 sounds. Either they'll hear that buzzer sound, which indicates it's not correct, or the bells that indicate that they got the correct products right, and that's when the money clock stops, and that's how much the contestant wins on the game. It is really that simple, and you totally want to make sure you don't miss out on anything that happens from here on out. Yeah. One important tip to know is make sure you go to your local grocery store, look at those prices of each of those products there so you can get a really good head start on where those products belong in what spot so you don't mess it up. And we are now going to move on to the next pricing game. Alright, I am in the kitchen, but of course not literally, but you know this goes. As we move on to the next pricing game, and we're on to some really good ones that involve playing for a brand new car. And the first one I'm going to talk about is One Away. Now, I'm sure you're all familiar with that game, because especially back in the Barker era, where it first debuted, I'm sure you know how this goes. So basically, their contestant is presented with the incorrect price of the car they're playing for. You can see them all in black numbers there. And each one of those is one away from the actual number for the car. And all the contestant has to do is choose which way the numbers go. So for instance, if you see 3, then you can choose to either go up to a 4 or down to a 2, and then so on and so forth until you get through all 5 numbers right there. And then you'll see what the price that is shown right there that you're given. And in order to find out if they got the correct numbers in the price of the car, I'm sure you know how this is going to go. Now, in the US version of the show, the host usually asks the contestant to ask the mighty sound effects lady for the numbers correct. And after the contestant does the response right there, if it determines that they got the number correct, they'll hear a car horn. And it'll just keep going through until they don't hear the car horn, which indicates that there's at least one of the numbers wrong and they have to change those specific numbers that are wrong. Now, in the Canadian version of the show, instead of playing the car horn, they play the same number of bells to indicate how many numbers are correct. So 1 bell is 1 number correct, 2 numbers correct is 2 bells, 3 bells is 3 numbers correct, 4 bells is 4 numbers correct, and 5 bells to indicate all 5 numbers correct, which would indicate the contestant won the car. Now, after the changes are made there, then they go reveal each number one by one. And if they're correct on all those changes, then the contestant does win the car. And it's another fun game, as long as you know how to play it and making sure that you get the correct numbers in the price of the car the way it should be. And now let's move on to the next pricing game. Oh, goody, goody, goody. On to another one of my favorites that's also usually played for a car in the US version of the show, and they also do it in the Canadian version of the show. It is called the Master Key, and it's played for 3 prizes, as I'm sure you are all familiar with. And what the contestant must do is they have to win keys, and they can win up to 2 of the keys, as well as the prizes. All they have to do is choose which set of the 2 numbers are correct, either the ones on the left or the ones on the right. If they get it correct, then they get to choose a key. Now, the only difference there is they have those keys numbered, so the contestant can ask the model Ashley for what number key they want in the King version, which is quite polite, I have to say. And then once they get those keys earned right there, they can go to those locks right there. And there's one thing to know about those locks to know about. Now, one of the things is there's one key that opens nothing, which you want to avoid. And there's a key for each of the 3 prizes there. And the one you want to go after is, of course, the Master Key, which opens all the locks, giving the contestant all 3 of the prizes, which is the one you ultimately want to go after. And it's always good to see those prizes being given away, especially on the one where, with a little luck, you can win them all. I just love Master Key so much. As long as it's done correctly, that's how it goes. And let's go on to the next pricing game. And yes, I am back at the grocery store, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. Like, literally, if you know how this goes. So, we're back to another one of my favorite grocery products game is called the Grocery Game. Now, basically, there's 5 products there, and you want to make sure you choose a product and then the number or quantity of it that you want. And then it'll be told up on the cash register. Now, there is a little difference right there in the cash register. In the US version of the price right, it's those old reel up totals right there. In the Canadian version, it's an LED display that shows the total. And all they gotta do is get to the total to reach between a certain range, which is $20 to $22. And you want to make sure you get to that range. One thing to keep in mind there, game loses for the contestant if they either go over $22 or if they use up all of the products and they don't hit the $20 mark. It is really that simple. Now, after the total is shown along the way, they'll be reminded of how much they're away from $22 and how much they'll win with if to get to $20 at the least. And it is really good. So another reason why you should make sure you go to your local grocery store, look at the prices of each of the products so you know what to plan for in terms of hitting the sweet spot, which is really good to know about. And I hope it helps you out a lot. And now let's move on to the next pricing game. Oh, yo. I would like to make that sound as I'm so excited to tell you about the next pricing game and another one of my favorites, featuring Cliff, the Yoli guy. It is called Cliffhangers, and it's played for 1 prize. Now, the objective of the contestant, what needs to do to win the prize and the game, is to prevent Cliff from falling off at the top of the mountain and can only go up 25 steps safely. And the way it works is the contestant needs to know a little bit about the prices of each of those 3 prizes. And what they gotta do is figure out what they believe the price is. And if they're correct, they'll hear a ding. If they don't, they'll hear a buzzer. And then they'll see how many steps Yoli guy takes before falling off to the edge of the mountain. Now, the objective is to keep Yoli guy from falling off after all 3 prizes are through, and if they keep Cliff safe, they win the prize. That's the way it goes, and the percentage rate of winning is very good. Just a little something to get you in the mood for, especially here, Yoli got Yoling, you know how this goes. Anyways, on to the next part. Alright, on to the next pricing game, and it's also another one of my favorite race type of games. It is called Switcheroo, and it's usually played for a brand new car, and there's 4 other small prizes that they have to figure out what it is. So, basically how this goes is the contestant is going to be given those 5 blocks, those number of blocks that correspond to each of the prizes there. All they gotta do is get all of those into the correct spot, and whatever they get correct, that's what they win, and they get 2 attempts to do so. And each attempt, they will have 30 seconds to get it all done. And by the way, they do it on a video board instead of on the physical one, as you would see on the US version of the show. And all they gotta do, make sure they get those numbers in before the 30-second runs out. And whatever remaining time they have left after they can go check it over to see if they want to make any changes there. Now, after each attempt, then the contestant will be shown how many of those 5 numbers they have correct. Now, if it shows 5, then the contestant wins the game and all 5 of the prizes. If it shows 0, 1, 2, or 3, then they can choose to decide of whether they can stay with what they have knowing they've won all those number of prizes. Maybe one of them could be that big prize. Or they can do another 30 seconds and make some switches right there and hope to improve the odds. Now, as I mentioned back in the one away game, you want to make sure that you just change just only that specific number of numbers. So if it's 0, then you have to change all 5. If it's 1, you change 4 of them. 2, right, you get to change 3 of them, and 3, you just change 2. That's really that simple. So you want to make sure that you know which ones are right and which ones are wrong. And the percentage rate of winning is also quite good, as long as the contestant stays on track. And now we move on to our next part. And alas, we're on to the next part of this episode, which is the Showcase Showdown, also known as the Big Wheel. And that's something they do after the end of each half of the show on the American version. In the Canadian version of The Price is Right tonight, however, they do it after all 4 of the pricing games are played. And it's really that simple. Of course, any of those 4 contestants that won their way up on stage, they get to go participate in spinning the big wheel. And it's really simple to know about as far as everything goes. Of course, the main objective is to get closest to $1 without going over to get into the showcase. Now, there is one difference to know about. Instead of 1 scoreboard, there's 2 scoreboards, because the top 2 scores, whoever ends up with the top 2 scores, will play in the showcase round, which I will talk about something real special once we get there as far as all that goes. But here's how it goes. I'm sure you all know about getting cash bonus. Now, usually in the American version there, if you get $1 in 1 spin or combination 2 spins, then you get $1,000 cash bonus as well as a bonus spin. And then, you know how it goes. The green section's 10 grand and the dollar 25 grand, which I mentioned in that previous video back when I did the 50th year part back then. So make sure you go check that out in the annotation card that you saw earlier in the video, so you get a quick glimpse of what it's like. Now, the only difference is, to get to $1,000 cash bonus on The Price Right tonight, is to get the dollar right on in 1 spin. Unfortunately, cannot be done in 2 spins there, but still would hold up to go and play in the showcase round. So, after all those spinners done there, whoever ends up with the top 2 will play in the showcase round. Now, of course, in the event of a tie, after all 4 spinners go through, if there's 2 top scores that have the same one, then it'll be a spin-off, and that will determine who's going to bid on their first showcase. And then, of course, the other one will bid on the second showcase. It all depends on the decision of the first contestant's showcase, what they decide to do there, which I'm going to talk about as we're going to do right now as we go on to the final part of this episode. Alright, we have come to the conclusion of this video and the last part of it, and it is the showcase round. So, of course, the 2 contestants that won their way up in the showcase round, they get to go play for everything in their showcase. So, of course, as y'all know, just the usual, the contestant that comes the closest to the actual retail price without going over on their showcase will win it all. And also another thing to keep in mind is if they are the winner right there. And we haven't seen the part there of what happens if the contestant gets within $250 or less away from the actual price of their showcase in the Canadian version there. I'm not sure if they'll still give away both showcases, which I highly doubt, but we'll see what happens when Season 2 comes around, which I'll talk about that at the end of this video, but I'm sure you know how this goes. So, just like as usual, the contestant will have a look, the top winner will look at the first showcase And if they like what they see and want to bid on it, they can do so, or pass it to their opponent and wait for the second showcase. And it's really that simple. It really is. And then after both of their bids are in, then the host will bring out the card and tell them what the actual retail price of their showcase is, and whoever is the closest will win it all. And that's all there is to it. And it's always an exciting time to see who wins it all, because that's what the beauty of it is, of winning the showcase is all about. And it's going to be exciting come that time. And now, on to the conclusion. Alright, time to wrap things up on this episode. And I just want to give you a little quick glimpse of when you can expect to see Season 2 of The Price is Right tonight. It's going to be coming your way this fall. It's going to be mostly in October. Now, I don't know the exact date there, but once I get all those details, I'll be sure to pass it on to you so you don't miss out. And I gotta say, I am totally feeling stoked of what to see on this Season 2 of The Price is Right tonight. And who knows, we could see some additions coming in terms of pricing game goes. And I definitely want to go leave with one more note to let you know, and I want to go talk about the one pricing game that I'm sure probably mostly everyone back in that Bob Barker era obviously keeps on hearing the explanation of, and it's called the check game. And here's how this goes. It's played for a prize, obviously, and then the check right there is where the contestant must write whatever amount they want. And they want to keep this in mind as what they believe the price of the prize they're playing for. And then write the remainder of it in cash in the check there. So basically, another word of saying that is to go with the price range there, the total right there, which currently is $8,000 to $9,000. And they have to subtract that from the price of the prize they believe it's worth and write the remainder of it in cash. And if the total reaches that range, then they win the prize as well as whatever they wrote the check for in cash. It's really that simple, even though it might sound confusing back then to a few, but that's the way it goes. But I, on the other hand, understand it very well. So we could see that addition come into play as far as everything goes. Anyways, with that in mind, I say that's it for now. Hopefully you did find this very useful, and if you did, do make sure you hit the like button, leave a legitimate comment below, hear your thoughts on this video, and if you haven't subscribed to the channel, make sure you hit that red button and turn on all notifications so you don't miss out on any new videos that come your way as far as all that goes. And I am totally stoked to see how Season 2 of The Price is Right tonight goes this fall. I can hardly wait to see how many more winners come out of this. It's going to be exciting. Anyways, I will see you all in the next video. Take care, everyone, and have a wonderful day, everyone. Bye for now.